You sure you know how to handle that, ma'am? Looks a little heavy for you. The voice, slick with the unearned confidence of a 20-year-old squad leader, cut through the quiet hum of the Naval Academy's main armory. The other cadets, a mix of nervous energy and youthful arrogance, snickered. The woman they addressed, Anna Petrova, did not flinch. She did not look up. Her hands, steady and sure, continued their methodical work, breaking down the bolt carrier group of an M210 enhanced sniper rifle. From the observation booth above, Master Chief Thorne watched, his old eyes narrowing slightly, not at the insult, but at the way her fingers moved with an economy he hadn't seen in a decade. The cadets saw a plain, middle-aged civilian contractor in a gray polo shirt, her hair tied back in a severe, functional bun. They saw someone to be dismissed. Thorne saw something else entirely. He saw a professional. If you believe true respect is earned in silence, not demanded with noise, type competence below. The silence that followed the cadet's jibe was more damning than any retort. It was a silence filled by the soft, rhythmic clicks of precisely machined steel components being separated by an expert. Petrova laid each piece on the oilcloth with the care of a surgeon arranging her instruments. The antagonist, a cadet named Miller with sharp creased trousers and a sharper tongue, wasn't finished. He swaggered closer, emboldened by her lack of reaction. Seriously, he pressed, leaning against the weapons rack. We're heading to the Advanced Marksmanship Qualifier next week. We need these rifles zeroed by someone who actually knows the platform, not some librarian sent over from logistics. More nervous laughter rippled through the group. They were the Academy's best and brightest, the future leaders of the fleet, and in their world, confidence was currency. Petrova, with her quiet demeanor and unassuming presence, seemed bankrupt. She continued her work, her focus absolute. She picked up the firing pin, holding it to the light, inspecting it for microfractures invisible to the untrained eye. Her posture was a study in stillness, a rock against which the waves of their juvenile mockery broke and dissipated. This was the core of their misjudgment. They equated silence with weakness, stillness with fear. They could not comprehend a calm so profound that it required no defense. They saw a target. They were blind to the fortress. Her lack of engagement was not submission. It was a form of professional filtering, a quiet dismissal of irrelevant noise. The only sounds from her were the clean, mechanical whispers of her task, a language far more articulate than Miller's empty bravado. Suddenly, the calm was shattered. A klaxon roared to life, and strobe lights bathed the armory in frantic pulses of red. A synthesized voice, devoid of emotion, echoed from the overhead speakers. Code red. Code red. Active shooter in the main armory. This is a drill. I repeat, this is a drill for a heartbeat. The cadets froze. This was a scenario they had practiced in simulators, but never here, never in the heart of the arsenal. Panic, a cold and greasy serpent, began to uncoil in the room. Miller, his face suddenly pale, started barking orders. Form on me. Grab training weapons. Blue barrels only. Set up a perimeter by the south door. His commands were textbook, but his voice was thin, strained. Cadets scrambled, fumbling with lockboxes, their movements clumsy and uncoordinated. Amidst the chaos, one figure remained a point of absolute stillness, Anna Petrova. She didn't flinch at the alarm. Her head rose slowly, her eyes scanning the room not with fear, but with an unnerving, analytical calm. She placed the firing pin gently back on the cloth, her movements still unhurried, yet imbued with a new and terrible purpose. The transition was seamless. The shift from technician to something else so fluid it was almost invisible. The librarian, as Miller had called her, was gone. In her place stood a predator. While the cadets fumbled, she moved. It wasn't a run. It was a flow, a liquid glide through the aisles of steel racks. Her hand darted into a small, unassuming lockbox on her workbench, one the cadets hadn't even noticed, and emerged with a blue-barreled training pistol. She didn't check it. She knew its condition intimately. As Miller was still trying to organize his panicked squad, the first assailant, a hulking instructor in padded red gear, burst through a side door. The instructor raised his own training weapon. Before he could acquire a target, Petrova fired twice. Pop pop. Two precise, chalk-tipped rounds struck the center of his helmet's faceplate, a perfect double tap. He stopped, stunned, and raised a hand to signal his kill. Another instructor appeared from behind a rack. Petrova didn't even seem to turn. She simply pivoted from her hips, a model of center-axis relock, and fired once. Pop. Another kill. The cadets had now stopped moving entirely, their own drill forgotten. They were spectators. A third and fourth instructor emerged from opposite ends of a long aisle, attempting to create a crossfire. It was a classic, difficult scenario. For Petrova, it was a simple geometric problem. She dropped to one knee, making herself a smaller target, and engaged the farther threat first, then the closer one. Pop pop. 2 more perfect shots. The entire engagement, from the first alarm to the neutralization of 4 highly trained aggressors, had taken less than 12 seconds. An impossible feat then, a deafening silence fell over the armory, broken only by the hum of the ventilation and the frantic pounding of 20 young hearts. Miller stood frozen, his mouth hanging open, a training rifle held uselessly in his hands. The heavy steel door of the observation booth swung open with a pneumatic hiss, and Master Chief Thorne descended the metal staircase. His face was granite, unreadable, but his heavy boots rang with an undeniable authority on the steps, each footfall a hammer blow against the stunned silence. He didn't look at the cadets. He didn't acknowledge the neutralized instructors who were now removing their helmets and staring at Petrova with undisguised awe. His gaze was locked on the quiet woman who was now methodically clearing her training pistol before placing it back in its lockbox. He walked past Miller as if the cadet were a piece of furniture, his path unwavering. He stopped a respectful 2 feet in front of Petrova. The air crackled with unspoken meaning. The cadets held their breath, expecting a reprimand, an investigation into the breach of protocol. They were about to receive an education instead. Thorne looked from the neatly arranged rifle components on the oilcloth to the woman's calm, impassive face. Her breathing was even, her expression placid. She had just performed a feat of martial skill that bordered on the supernatural, and she looked as if she had just finished cataloging library books. The Master Chief's gaze softened for a fraction of a second, a flicker of recognition, of shared memory from a world these cadets couldn't possibly imagine. That was a textbook center-axis relock. Thorne's voice was a low rumble, but it carried to every corner of the armory. Fast, stable, and lethal. I haven't seen it executed that cleanly since my time at Dam Neck. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The cadets exchanged confused glances. Dam Neck was the home of the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, the legendary SEAL Team 6. Thorne's eyes bore into Petrova's. It's been a long time. Trident, the call sign hung in the air, a key unlocking a door to a hidden world. He then turned his gaze upon Miller and the other cadets, and the warmth was gone, replaced by an Arctic frost. This, ma'am, this librarian you were so quick to disrespect, he began, his voice dripping with controlled fury, is Chief Warrant Officer 5 Anna Petrova, retired. Her last active duty assignment was with the unit I just mentioned, as a direct action operator and later as their lead weapons and tactics evaluator. He took a sharp breath. She has more confirmed combat deployments than all of you have combined training hours. She has forgotten more about this M210 rifle than you will ever learn. She is here, as a civilian, because I personally requested her to ensure that the weapons you arrogant children carry into battle are perfectly maintained. She is a living legend, and you treated her like a janitor. He turned back to Petrova. Then, in the ultimate gesture of respect a Master Chief can give, he snapped to attention and delivered a slow, perfect, reverent salute. Ma'am, he said, his voice thick with meaning. A privilege to have you. The story of what happened in the armory spread through the academy not like wildfire, but like a shockwave. It traveled in hushed, awe-filled whispers in the mess halls, in encrypted messages between midshipmen, and in the quiet, knowing nods of the senior enlisted instructors. The details were honed and polished with each telling. The 12-second engagement. The 4 killed instructors. The call sign, Trident. The Master Chief's salute. Cadet Miller's public humiliation was absolute, but the event became something more than a simple tale of comeuppance. It became a parable. The armory, once a noisy den of pre-mission swagger and chest thumping, transformed overnight. The ambient noise level dropped. Cadets entering the space now moved with a new sense of purpose and quiet respect. They cleaned their weapons with a focus they had previously lacked, their movements more deliberate, their inspections more thorough. They started to understand that the tool in their hands was not a prop for their ego, but a sacred responsibility. Anna Petrova became a ghost, a legend walking among them. They would see her, still in her simple gray polo shirt, moving quietly through the ranges or the weapons vaults, and they would part ways for her, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and profound respect. The swagger was gone, replaced by a nascent professionalism. A week after the incident, Miller found Petrova in the same spot, at the same workbench, this time meticulously reassembling the very same M210 rifle. He approached cautiously, his posture completely changed. The arrogant strut was gone, replaced by a hesitant, humbled shuffle. He stood silently for a full minute before he could summon the courage to speak. "Ma'am," he began, his voice barely a whisper. I wanted to apologize. For my conduct. There's no excuse. I was arrogant, and I was wrong." Petrova didn't stop her work, her hands moving in their familiar, hypnotic rhythm as she seated the bolt into the carrier. She tightened a screw, checking the torque by feel. Only when the assembly was complete did she pause. She wiped her hands on a clean rag, then turned to face him, her eyes holding his for the first time. They were not angry, or disappointed, or triumphant. They were simply clear, like calm, deep water. She gave a single, sharp nod of acceptance. Then she spoke, her voice low and even, her first unsolicited words to him. "Assumptions are weight," she said. "They're heavy. They slow you down in a fight. Travel light, cadet." The simple phrase landed with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just an acceptance of his apology, it was the most profound tactical lesson he had ever received. He nodded, unable to speak, the words branding themselves onto his soul. He finally understood. Competence didn't need to be loud. It simply was. 6 months passed. A new class of first-year cadets, plebes, stood nervously in the main armory for their initial weapons orientation. They were greeted not by a shouting instructor, but by a calm, self-assured midshipman first class, Miller. He was harder now. The youthful arrogance burned away, leaving something stronger and more resilient in its place. He led them not to a lectern, but to the workbench where Anna Petrova still sometimes worked. Pinned to the wall above it was a small, laminated card. It was a target sheet from the indoor range, showing a single, ragged hole in the center of the bullseye. Below it, a small brass plate read, CW05, RET, A. Petrova. 3 rounds. 500 yards, Miller tapped the card. "Before you touch a single weapon in this armory," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "you will learn about respect. You will learn about professionalism. And you will learn the story of the woman who fired this group." He told them everything. He didn't spare himself, detailing his own arrogance and the humbling that followed. He told them about the quiet contractor who moved like a phantom and the lesson she taught him without raising her voice. The story had become institutional doctrine, a mandatory lesson for all incoming personnel. The drill she had inadvertently created was now formally on the training schedule, known academy-wide as the Petrova Clearance Drill. It was the hardest test of tactical speed and precision a cadet would face, and a constant, humbling reminder of the standard. Her legacy was not a statue in a courtyard or a name on a building. It was something more potent, more alive. It was in the hushed quiet of the armory, in the focused intensity of a cadet cleaning their rifle. It was in the way senior leaders now looked for quiet competence instead of loud confidence. Anna Petrova eventually finished her contract and moved on, disappearing as quietly as she had arrived. But she never truly left. Her spirit was woven into the very culture of the academy. The legend of Trident, the unassuming librarian who was secretly one of the deadliest warriors of her generation, became a foundational myth. It was a story told to every new generation of officers, a lesson in the virtues of humility, discipline, and the profound power of silence. It taught them that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one you notice least. It taught them that true strength is not about the noise you make, but about the impact you have. Her actions prove that a legacy isn't something you build for yourself. It's what others carry forward because of you. It's the standard that remains long after you are gone. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud ignorance, and where silent professionalism defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Tales.